Well, thanks for coming, everybody. I know you came for the pizza, but you get to listen to me too. So, as you heard, we're going to talk about Chappy's Outdoors. Definitely, it was a great privilege in my life to have this thing created. We did start it at my house, garage level, kind of a startup, and it has become, really, it's got quite a national presence, something I never dreamed it would become. But we're also, as she said, going to talk about a lot of the problems along the way that we've encountered. So, first off, allow me to just talk about what Chappy's Outdoors is. What it is you've heard it's a nonprofit ministry. It's for wounded, ill, and injured veterans. And we classified all three of them, not just combat veterans, because there's a lot of people that come back ill from whatever disease they got over there, but also just injured in general. And I want to clarify something, because I know that we got international students here as well, and people that may think of ministry different when I say that term. So by ministry, what I mean is it is a Christian, faith-based initiative. So I just want to clarify that. That's why we call it a ministry here in the United States. Also, our motto is up there. I just wanted to show you, healing heroes through God's creation. It's kind of how we viewed it, is we're taking them out into God's creation, so why not help them enjoy that peace and that wonderful creation that He's given us. So as you see, we got a few pictures here too. This is from our initial startup, but why Chappy's Outdoors? Well, we believe there's a lot of therapeutic value. As a matter of fact, we believe that there's proven therapeutic value in hunting and fishing. That may be one of the first times you've ever heard that, if you've ever heard anything about hunting and fishing. A lot of people are like, therapeutic, especially for veterans. We had some challenges along the way on this. Now, as a matter of fact, I've had some articles and things that I wrote about this. One of the articles I wrote, I just want to read to you a segment of. It's quite lengthy, so I'll only read a little segment of this. So in this, I talk about the troop care scandal. I said that wrong a little bit, but the troop care scandal that happened in 2007 at Walter Reed. There was a lot of publicity on it in the New York Times and Stripes and Washington Post. It was big news back then. I was personally medically evacuated out of Iraq during that time to that unit, so I got to experience it firsthand, all the stories about that. So I write a little bit about that scandal, and basically all these units called warrior transition units for our wounded veterans were formed to begin, this is where I'll read directly what it says, were formed to begin focusing on the total health of our wounded from both Iraq and Afghanistan. The design was to help veterans transition back into the Army or out into civilian lifestyle, for example. This scandal attracted numerous organizations. These organizations would donate tickets to events, such as concerts or NFL games or things like that. Now think about that for a moment. Typical NFL game, I don't watch it as much anymore. Actually for years, but they last, say what, 4 to 6 hours at the most, I don't know. So you're getting these guys out of the hospital for that long. A concert ticket gets them out of the hospital for, again, a few hours, right? So we would give them these, and by the way, they're very grateful for these events, and it helps out, but just for a few hours at a time, and then they go right back to the hospital, right? So that was something that I was noticing. So the scandal attracted all these different organizations to provide those kind of tickets and those kind of small day trips and stuff like that, various other items, all with the goal of encouraging and contributing to the welfare of these individuals. But recently, articles have been published that reveal just how difficult everyday life in one of these units can be for these veterans. As a matter of fact, the suicide statistics within these units alone has begun to rise. The statistics reveal a great need amongst these veterans. Our veterans no longer have a need for just simple appreciation at an event that lasts only mere hours. They need real retreats. They need things that help them basically remove stress. They need their retreats to be centered around the removal of that stress, the stress that they're enduring at these warrior transition units. In my view, the answer has been found within the outdoor industry. So since my return from Iraq, and this again is when I was writing a few years ago, I have been part of sending, supporting, or creating and administering more than 80 different outdoor events for these truly deserving heroes. I'd equate these outdoor experiences, and I think this will help you understand it, with that of a youth camp, just for adults, right? But if you equate it with the idea of a youth camp, here's what happens. In the outdoors, you don't have cell phone reception. They're not always just looking down at the cell phone all day long, right? You don't have people that are barking orders from them, telling, here's the next appointment you got to make. Here's the next stressful thing we need you to get through to achieve better health for your life. They're only the individuals that have determined to bless our veterans with a lengthy retreat away from it all. And this is certainly just maybe another show of appreciation, you may think, right? But it's so much more as well. Usually, the trips that we host for these for these guys out in the outdoors involve hundreds of people and an entire community of those that come around them and say, we want to just show so much love to you guys. What was really cool was the first time we started taking Vietnam veterans. And we did a little thing where we brought some motorcyclists out that basically went and we flew them to the airport. They stood with flags on the runway as they came out of the plane, and they walked between these flags. They broke down crying. They said, nobody ever said thank you for our time we served. We're saying that now to them. We do a lot of these things, and I've kind of finished what I wanted to say about this, but the therapeutic value for the Vietnam veterans, for today's veterans, for all these veterans, it's been proven. And you know what's really cool? As we started finding this, there's books written on this, all kinds of books. I left a bunch of them up here that talk about various different ways in which you can find value in the outdoors. I love this guy is even talking about, he's got a book called, it's not up here, but No Child Left Inside. I love the idea. That's right. We need to get people back out and into enjoying God's creation. There's therapy in it. This guy right here, I want to tell you about real quick. His name's Scott. This year, it was 4 years ago when we took him on that trip right there. This year, his wife ran up to me really, and gave me this huge hug, nearly choking me to death. She said, thank you so much. I have a husband because of your program. So I started asking what she meant by that, because I didn't know the full story when we took him 4 years ago. This was the first ever event. He's a Marine, he was a sniper. He took all the focus that he'd had of what he'd witnessed through the scope of a gun, all negative, nightmares about it and everything. He took all of that and he went out and carried a gun. Now, some people were like, I don't think that sounds smart there, Chappy. But at the same time, he's now rejoicing over what he's doing with the same thing that brought him nightmares. You get it? We're not just taking what was so challenging before and saying, let's just talk to you about your problems. We're saying, let's associate something incredibly huge and a blessing and a great life memory and experience around the same thing that you struggled with before. Now, we got to be cautious about doing that. We actually have to have doctors help approve all this. So we went through a lot of different steps to prove the therapy of our outdoor programs. We even took this program to the Senate, trying to get them to sign off on giving more veterans more opportunities to go into the outdoors by giving better discounts or better rates on their non-resident status licenses in all the different states we went to. And we've achieved that in 4 different states already. Okay, so I've talked enough about that. Our impact. The stats are this. We've been running now for about 10 years. We started really growing in many ways. First of all was the board of directors, the board members. We went from just 1, me, to quickly 3. One of those 3 was my wife, a little reluctantly. Actually, I had to end up firing her later. By the way, don't recommend that if you don't got a good relationship with your spouse. But yeah, we went to 3, then we went to like 12, and I'll talk about a little the challenges with board members because we're down to 9. So there's some challenges apparently in there, right? But also we grew staff. As you heard, it takes sometimes hundreds of people to pull off one of these events. Regional coordinators all over the U.S. that have helped us out with this. Chapters. What we mean by chapters is a local event. For example, in Batavia, New York, we have a chapter. And in that location, there's a church men's group that actually hosts the event every year. And they bring out hundreds of people, and the entire community shows up to support them. And they host like 10 guys every year. And then they go to several different locations within the city and do some really cool stuff. It's all donated. These are really big. It takes a lot of staff, takes a lot of people. But sponsors, from people sponsoring financially to products, outdoor media we've been in on television shows and more. But the stats that you may want to hear about is we've actually supported now more than 1,500 different veterans over that amount in 23 different states, both hunting and fishing for like 32 or 33 different species of animals now. So we've really become a lot bigger than I ever dreamed we would. I'm just trying to show you the impact of how fast this grew. The current focus, well, Of course, we want to help our chapters a lot more, develop them a lot more, grow them more, give them the kind of resources they need to continue to impact the veterans at their events. We want to also get more financial support. Believe it or not, in about the first 5 or 6 years, we would function every year off of no more than about $1,500 to $2,000. None of the staff, none of the board members, nobody gets paid for what we do. We don't take any of the money. 100% of those funds go right back to our veterans. And we want to keep it that way. Granted, we're growing so big now, we need a lot more than $1,500 to $2,000 to support this. So we've actually got, for our last 3 to 4 years, we've had regular financial donors. But we've also found the wonderful blessing of grants. Grants are really big. We've applied for 4 right now, and those are wonderful when we get those. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. The veteran database and the website rebuild. Right there's a photo of our website. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more here in a little bit. And then our veteran database, right now it looks a little bit more like this. It's a Google email account. And it's a list of all our contacts in there. Granted, it keeps some great information on them. Phone numbers, I blacked out the important stuff. Where they're located, whether they're a Purple Heart recipient, what region of the U.S. We can locate them and find out all kinds of data on this. This was a great starting approach to it. We're going to try to make that better. So how did it all begin? Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story. Basically, from my time, I deployed in October of 2006 to Iraq. I was medically evacuated in November of 2007. I was there for almost 13 months. Came down with a very deadly form of a cancer internally in my body, my chest, arm, neck, and head. And so I was medevaced out to Walter Reed Army Medical Center. I was given about less than 6 months to live. Obviously, that didn't come true, thankfully. I've had a lot of surgeries since then and a lot of care, but I'm fully recovered on that. But having gone to Walter Reed, what that did is that placed me in those warrior transition units. Every week I would get to watch these guys walk in with legs, arms missing, and injured by shots or things. I met guys that had 3 or 4 Purple Hearts, just amazing individuals. Yes, they couldn't learn how to duck. But bottom line was, I started all this because as I watched them and I realized they need a retreat, I thought, well, why not take them back to my heritage? My greatest time spent, my retreats that I enjoyed the most were spent with this man, my grandfather. He taught me how to hunt. Taught me how to fish. I grew up on a farm in Kansas. I mean, it's what you do out there. It's our pastime. So I took them back to what I enjoyed doing. And so our first event was what you see up here. It was a fishing event. And I was just thinking to myself, why just take a couple guys, right? Maybe I'm just one of these kind of people, very determined or whatever about this. So why just take a couple of guys? So I go down to Lake Anna, Virginia when I lived in the D.C. area, going to Walter Reed. I went down there and I talked to one of their guides and I said, I'd like to take a few veterans out for a fishing trip, maybe hold a little bass tournament. He goes, how many veterans are we talking about? I said, 60 to 80. And he, what? He goes, how are we going to host that many? I said, well, we got to get started. And he goes, when you want to do this? I said, September. It was July when I was talking to him. He goes, can we really pull this off? I said, we're going to pull it off. First event had 65 veterans, and we had enough boats to support them all. All came from semi-pro anglers to professional anglers. Do you see the kind of boats that people started donating after? This was about the 2nd or 3rd year. I mean, we had some amazing, Bass Pro Shops got on board, donated a boat and a trailer to the winning veteran one year. I mean, it just grew so fast. But you can see how we can support 1,500 veterans a year when we're taking 65 on one event. And then, I think we did 2 events on that lake a year, so 130 a year right there. All right, so that's kind of how we got started. But I'm telling you, right there, that one event created something. We seen passion start to flow from everybody going, I want to get involved. And it grew really big. This guy right here is a guy that came to that first event, and he goes, this is awesome. You know what I'd like to do? Give me the names of the top 20 veterans, and I'll take them hunting on my outfitting business this fall. Okay, great. Second event's already scheduled, just like that. And it just, things like that would flow. From the experience that people would get and see these veterans enjoying, they'd do more for them. The mission, well, it started as a retreat where basically we would take these guys and I just sent them out on hunts or fishing trips. And I had the wrong focus as a chaplain, and I'm going to go ahead and admit this. I should have been focused on ministry. I love ministry. But my heritage was I didn't grow up that way. I loved just hunting and fishing for the hunting and fishing aspect, just to get out. So I'd send these guys out and I go, hey, go have a great time. And we didn't do anything for ministry. So our startup was kind of that way. We were just sending them out, and it wasn't really changing their lives. They'd call you once in a while, hey, thanks for the great trip. That's about all we'd ever hear from them. But I thought, we want to change their lives. So we needed something more. So it started as a retreat, but it became a lot more. And this picture right here is one that really vaulted us into realizing the great impact of ministry. This is a quadriplegic, shot her first ever deer. And I got to tell you, this impacted so many people, this one event. Changed lives for my Lord. And it was an awesome journey doing that one. But what we also had to do then is we had to change our staff, because by the time we got this thing going, I already had about 5 people involved that didn't really agree that we needed to do the ministry side. So we started to have to change the staff as well. So we went from having a staff that wasn't as focused on the outdoor stuff to having one that this is the first 4 of us that really decided we want to go forward with ministry. You got Jeremy, this guy's a 3-time Purple Heart recipient. You got this guy here, this is Ryan, and the guy on the far side of me there is Richie. Each one of them were impacted by the ministry. We took them as a veteran first, and they loved it so much, and they had great connections. We used them to vault it to the next level and use all their contacts. They wanted to be a part of it, so it was a great way to share the vision and carry it out. Okay, so how did it all begin? Well, we had to make it official, right? Couldn't just be a great idea. Couldn't just be a program that only I or a few guys ran. We had to make it official. We had to get it incorporated. And that requires a lot of reading, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but it required also becoming nonprofit. We call that 501c3 in legal terms. Why? Because people they'll be a lot more readily wanting to give to you if they can say, I can write it off on my taxes each year. That I get, as a matter of fact, today's the Cyber Giving Tuesday. People are giving, right? So, they'll get a tax write-off for giving this time of year. But that's one of the things we had to do and get banking and start to build our credit. So I want to talk to you about the important steps. Now that I've described Chappy's Outdoors, let me talk to you, make it practical for you. The important steps. 1, I would say you got to get 501c3 status. You got to become, if you're going that direction, you got to become nonprofit, and you got to get to where people can say, I'll give because I'll get something in return, a tax write-off. Now that required a lot of different paperwork and filing a lot of stuff, and you can do it a couple different ways. There's a lot of different websites. In just a very short while, I can tell you can find a lot of them. It even says here, don't be deceived, by the way. It says starting at $49. I told you it won't end at $49 because you're paying a lawyer. Keep that part in mind, okay? So granted, we looked into it and we thought to ourselves, the amount of money, making only $1,500 to $2,000 a year at the time, is not going to cover us being able to do it. So it took me probably 6 months of reading, doing a lot of researching, learning how to write and kind of some legal jargon. And basically, I ended up being the one that wrote up our paperwork and secured our 501c3 status. So the way you have to go about that is you have to have articles of incorporation. In the states, this is one of the things that's very important. You have to have bylaws. You have to file all this paperwork with the right state. So you learn what their requirements are, and you go from there. All right, so another important step, website. You got to have your presence where people are looking for it. Right now, that's the internet. So we had to have a website. Again, I'm going to talk to you about the 2 different methods to do that. We did it self-built. This is a photo of one of the pages off our website. We put some quotes about what people say about how the program benefited them. We tried to make this a very user-friendly website. That's actually the most common comment we get about our website. Very user-friendly. Thank you. I'm not distracted by so many other things going on there. So what's the benefit? Well, we saved a lot of money. Again, that's one of the ways that I would say it's a benefit. We save money. But let me tell you another really important benefit versus having somebody professionally do it. Another important benefit is this. If I want my website updated and I've got somebody else controlling it, I'm going to send them all the stuff I want done, and they'll get around to it when they get around to it. And you don't have very fast updates. Matter of fact, you don't often control it either. Because they may go, well, I like what you're saying, but I think it needs to say this. So they may put their own spin on your own website. So we decided with all of that and with the expense of it, we'll save money, we'll go our own way. But now let me do something else. Let me talk about logo, because you don't only need website presence, but you also need a logo. You're going to have your logo on everything you do. I have some brochures out there. We got, shirts, jackets that got our logo on them. We got them everywhere. You got to have a stamp on everything you're doing, right? But here's the thing about that. With the logo, I've been telling you, we did it this way versus a professional. I'm going to talk again about it in a way that I just want to show you that we didn't do everything ourselves. I mean, we started that way. So take a look at these logos. I got to show you this. Okay, so here's our first logo. I designed that one. You guys laughed. Is it really that funny? Come on, I thought I did good on this. Okay, so I even took the time to write little blue lines, right there around the hook. Okay, but just taking a look at it, here's what I want to ask you. This is the importance of a logo. What does it tell you we're about? You already know what we're about, but tell me what it tells you by looking at this. What does this tell you? Hunting and fishing. Snipers, okay. You get all kinds of answers with this one. Also, what does it say? How do you read that? Happy's outdoors. Right? Okay, so we started to see there was a few different problems. Is there anything on there that says we've got a Christian initiative? Okay, so we went to this one. Are we doing better? Okay, so it's a little bit more fine-tuned. The clarity's better. I thought we did good there. You can actually see my string. That's pretty good. We got the cross. It's no longer Happy's. We did pretty good. Okay, these went for years using these. And we liked that. And I think it was working. But then you ask yourself, what's missing? Does anybody really know what we're about? Who are we in the outdoors with? Military. Do you see it on there? I don't. How would you get that we're working with the military out of the logo? So we needed something else. So I finally decided we do need professional help. I wanted to just say that in public. I thought that sounded funny. Okay, well, anyways, so we got professional help. And here's our first shot at it. That was our first shot. I think that's not bad, right? Board members didn't like it. What do you think they wouldn't like about it? The cross. A lot of people were like, I don't like it. That cross is just... We're more about the cross than we are the hunting. Why is the deer so much bigger than the cross? And the other thing was, you see the little hook, we started to lose a lot more of our fishing events, so we wanted to keep that kind of minor. Thought that was a good way to do it. So we said, okay, that's not good enough, and we came up with our final product. We've had so many compliments on this. We paid for it, mind you, but we've had a lot of compliments from people that run outdoor TV shows saying that is the best outdoor logo I've seen ever. I quoted him, put it on the website. I'm like, thank you. But why do we like it so much? Can you tell we're about the military? Yeah. Can you tell we have a Christian initiative? Yes, it's prominent. It's on the front dog tag. Can you tell we're about hunting, fishing? Can you tell the name and actually read it versus this? Of course you can. Great, so logos are important. Just wanted to show you that. Important steps, social media, very important. Do not underestimate the power of social media. Matter of fact, let me show you something kind of neat. This is called the Internet Map. If you've never seen it before, you can just look it up sometime. Just Google search make sure you include the word the Internet Map. You know what it'll show you? Top sites are always the largest. You can zoom in on these and get really small, and there'll be other ones around it. And basically, that little speck right about there, I think, is Chappy's Outdoors, by the way. But no, you can see the top ones, the biggest ones, are the ones that are visited the most. We have our presence on Google, Facebook, and YouTube. Highly recommend that if you get into a nonprofit ministry. Get your presence where people are visiting it. You could build a whole business off of Facebook. Also, magazine media. There's some up front here. As a matter of fact, the ones that are pictured, I put up there. If you want to look at those later, we got a couple articles in those. And then lastly, TV advertisements. I got a little one that I want to show you. So this is about 3.5-minute video of, again, remember, we have gone nationally big now. And so this, to me, was kind of our pinnacle. We've reached where this show is one of the top 10 outdoor shows right now on one of the top 2 networks that people watch for outdoor hunting. It's called Bowhunter TV, and they did this little segment on Chappy's Outdoors. So I'm going to hit play. guys hear that in the back?
Welcome, bow hunters. This week we have a super cool hunt for the elusive Sika deer with bow hunter contributor CJ Winan and wounded warrior Jeff Sanders. Both our hunters share a background in the U.S. Marine Corps, and they're headed to Dorchester County in southern Maryland to meet up with land manager Kevin Compton during the peak of the Sika rut in mid-October.
We're here in Dorchester County, Maryland, hunting Sika deer, and we got the honor of hunting with Jeff Sanders. He's a wounded warrior from Iraq, United States Marine, and Kevin Compton. He's the operational manager here in the farm. Kevin, I know this is the rut of the Sika deer, is that correct?
Yes, it is prime time in the middle of October. It should be a great week. We're excited to have Jeff here. It's a pleasure. We appreciate everything you've done. We put together a little care package here with some camo clothing to help you throughout the season and a great block target. Get you through with all your practicing. We'll put that to good use very shortly.
That's awesome, Kevin. Thank you so much.
Look forward to having you guys here all week. Hopefully we'll have some good times, good stories, and put some stuff in the pool for you.
Jeff, as you know, we met through a nonprofit organization entitled Chappys Outdoors. The founder is an Army chaplain, Jeremiah Catlin. Like yourself, he's also a wounded warrior from the Iraq War. He knew there was something else needed for our wounded warriors. And what he came up with went back to his childhood, hunting and fishing. He started taking warriors on fishing and hunting trips. And that growth that he found in those warriors just basically brought them alive. They found purpose in life. And like yourself, I know you know that purpose, especially from the hunting side.
If you're looking to experience a change of pace from the typical mid-October whitetail lull, the Maryland Sika deer rut is a really fun opportunity for a really cool animal. To book a hunt of your own, go to bowhunter.com and see our outfitter and public land options in the state.
And did you catch what he said right there at the end? He goes, to book a hunt of your own. So I got to tell you a funny story about that. I love that we had some huge advertisement by this program running all of this about Chappys Outdoors. But my phone blew up. That number that he showed is my personal cell phone. I got to tell you, I got a regular job, y'all, and that phone blew up from this thing hitting. And people were always calling, and I was grateful. But they would call and they go, hey, we'd love to book a Sika deer hunt with you. And I'm like, totally did not get what they were saying about the show. So the way he said it at the end, if you'd like to book a hunt, that was the problem. So, but it's still great publicity. We've had so much coverage from that. And I think that is where we got our huge national presence, was going to the television shows that we've been on now. So, got a lot of things here on the future approach. I'm going to talk more about, let me go to this one, challenges along the way. So first of all, and I think these are great lessons learned, board member disagreements. I don't care whether you're, faith-based or not, you're going to have some disagreements. A guy that I would have thought was almost like a best friend became my vice president, and we've had disagreements over it. Why? Over this ministry? Why? Because he saw it needs to go a certain way, and he felt like we were going the wrong direction. So he started challenging that, and I welcome that, which is why we had the logo changed so much, because my board members were telling me we got to change it. I welcome them to challenge me. I want to grow, and I think that's important. But the problem was his challenges were not really valid amongst anybody else. No one else saw it the same way. That was during a time we had 12 of us on the board, and so he chose to step down. The good news is we've remained great friends and we're always in contact. So we didn't part ways in bad terms. It's just he felt like he couldn't be a part of the ministry. So I would tell you, when you start to have those kind of disagreements, there's a couple things you have to keep in mind. One is, and I think this is very important, you have to humble yourself enough to ask the question, am I really the one at fault? As the leader of the organization, I have to ask that all the time. If I'm the one at fault, then I got to be willing to admit that. Guys, put me in check. Tell me where I'm faulty and let's fix it together. I think that's what's kept so many of them on board and wanting to keep pushing forward. But the other thing is sometimes you also got to be the leader that says, no, actually we need to put our foot down. We need to stand in this area and say we're not wavering on this. That takes some guts as well. So board member disagreements, financial. As you heard before, I've already alluded to some of this, we didn't have much when we started, but we would never stop doing it. We kept pressing forward. Don't lose the determination that you have or the passion that you have for whatever nonprofit that you start up. Don't lose that just because the funding's not there. Find some way to be determined and keep on pressing forward and get some funding. We did that. Adapting the mission actually to the customer needs or the industry needs. Okay, so as you heard me talking about before, you know, there's a problem some people have with putting a gun back in the hands of someone who's got PTSD. You know where that came from? A lot of it came from? Anybody heard of the story of Chris Kyle? Okay, so he was helping out a veteran who had PTSD, and that guy ends up shooting him, right? So from that date forward, our entire ministry has had to change. Because there's doctors now that say, I'm not sending any of our veterans out with your organization. There's doctors that now have gone that direction. Or there's people that say, I don't want to host any of those veterans because I know what happened to Chris Kyle. So it's getting a lot more difficult, a lot more challenging to try to get people to want to partner. So we have to adapt to that. We have to find ways in which we convince people, or we have to find ways in which we put them through some checks before we bring them on the trips. Proving the therapeutic value that kind of goes along with that. The supply of locations and the supply of veterans. We haven't lost that. Our supply of veterans has grown astronomically. We have over 550 veterans now awaiting a trip with us. And we just don't have the places to send them. We need more. So the real problem is we need to create more supply for locations to take them. Competition. Believe me, there's a ton of competition out there. People want to be patriotically supporting our wounded veterans. And they want to do it in so many different ways. How do we compete, make ours different? Is we talk about how we really produce real life change with them. Not just so we give them a great hunt and they get to shoot some great trophy. Burnout has been another big thing. And I've actually talked to this with a couple of my colleagues in class up here. Me personally, I've been burnt out. I do way too much on this and I don't have time for it, especially being here at school. So a lot of my hands are off of it. I haven't done much with it since I've been here. But I tell you, the burnout can come when you start to think, is it really making an impact? And then you go on one of those trips like I did where Scott's wife runs up and hugs me. I think, I can't quit, you know? I just love it too much. I love the impact it's making. All right, so some closing advice I want to give you. Stay devoted to that focus. The mission that makes you start whatever nonprofit, non-government organization that you start, stay focused on that. Don't lose that mission. That's one place to take a stand for sure. Get the mission right then in the beginning so that you can take a firm stand on that. And I think we've finally got our mission right. Our mission is to really try to produce life change in the veterans. Generate passion. How do you do that? Talk about the experiences. There's another little folder up here that I've got. We pass these out at all our events. There's like 4 of these that'll go around. We put them around, we say, before you leave, all the veterans, sign this. Tell us about how this impacted your life. And we got several of them full now. So there's some experiences in there. Use their experiences to also tell the story about how you make an impact. And then also refuel your staff. In other words, our board of directors, the regional coordinators, make sure you spend some money on them too every now and then. Say, hey, I know you haven't been on an event for a while. You're going. Well, I don't have the money. Fine, we'll pay to send you. Invest in them so that they keep refueling the same passion that you have. Don't let them get burned out. That's a lot of what I've got for advice for you for now about nonprofits, non-government organizations. Think I've talked enough? I'll let you guys ask questions. All right?
Who's first?
Oh, it's good. The video you showed, did you have a hand in like crafting the sequence of events?
In a way.
I noticed that it mirrored a lot kind of how in the military, you know, we plan, we prepare, we want to execute. So it kind of followed along exactly what you were saying. So I just wondered if you had a...
Yeah. In all this spare time I have, I do video editing as well as video recording. So I run a camera for some of these outdoor shows. So yes, I sent to them, I said, here's an idea I've got. They ran with it and did their own thing beyond that. But one of the ways in which I think you see my hand put into it the most is what you hear CJ, the professional hunter, you hear him saying about me and how it got started and all that. He was like, what do I say about your program? And I said, well, here's a spiel. I think I probably sent him 3 pages, or whatever. And then he goes, that's too much. I can't say that. I said, okay. So I condensed it down to like a paragraph. He goes, that's good. I might be able to memorize that one. I think he did excellent at really capturing what we're about. And that's what I wanted. So, and no better veteran, by the way, to send on our first show. That was one of our first ones. And we just vaulted from there. So, yeah, I had a little bit of hand in it. So, all right. Yeah.
You mentioned that one of the things that is difficult is people wanting to send veterans here because they're going to be using guns and they think that that's a concern because of PTSD. But I feel like the faith aspect seems like it could be just as divisive or as a deterrent to some people who would love to go hunt, but they're off-put by the fact that it's Christian based. So
yeah.
How do you deal with
That's
that?
actually, thank you for bringing it up. It's a very great point. So in our application process, when we get all their information, we have a question at the very bottom that says, this is a faith-based initiative. Are you okay with participating in this because of that? Now, that's our very first application look at them. Then when they actually select a trip they want to go on, we send another one out where we say there will be devotions, there will be, churches that host banquets in your honor. There will be, things like this at your location you're going to. Are you okay with that? And there'll be guys, we had one, I won't tell the full length of the story because it'd take too much. We had one that was he was what you'd call one of them old crusty Marines. And he came, he was, I think, Master Sergeant level for the Army. I think that's still the same, isn't it? But he comes on this trip, and the first thing he says to me, he walks up and he goes, I filled out your application. I just want you to know I want nothing to do with any of that religion crap. And that's the first thing he says to me. I'm like, hi, my name's Chappy. Great to meet you too. But on the first day, in the morning, I told him we were going to do some devotions. And he said, I don't want to come in and listen to it. So I said, well, that's fine. We'll just open up the door and you can listen to it from out there on the porch. And he was like, he looked at me and he thought, this guy's about as stubborn as I am. So I left the door open and I said, well, just, we're paying for your trip. Just sit out there and listen. So he sat outside and he listened. And by the time we ended the trip, he actually wanted to go to the church service and he was in tears at it. So we see the divisiveness even change many times, which is kind of a really flooring experience. Would have never thought that would have been the case. But yes, we experience it often. We try to warn them ahead of time, but they still come because they want the hunt. But they end up getting so much more. So, yeah.
Do you do follow-up services? Like, how do you kind of keep that link to the veterans that have come on that hunt so that you can kind of keep tabs on them and support them as they need?
Yeah. I think one of the things that I would have talked about a little bit more would have been our next initiative, our future approach. We're going to have this revisioning meeting coming up in May, provided I can get away. It's only about an hour and a half away from here, so I'm hoping I can still make it happen. But all the board members are going to get together and we're going to build an initiative that we have one person focused on keeping in touch with them. Because that's important. Right now, you'd be floored. I actually have about 1,200 contacts in my cell phone. And most of them contact me. And while I've been here, they don't get through to me very much. And so I'm kind of neglecting them, which is fine. I want them, to trust in some of our other staff members. So I've got, a few people that are working with them now more than I do. But it used to be mainly me for follow-up. And I'll tell you, these guys do. They call a lot afterwards. Another follow-up piece that we did is we've got a database of churches through my faith, my background. And that database of churches, I can find out what churches we have in their local population. So after the hunt, we'll say, hey, would you like us to send some information on a place you can find some encouragement for your newfound faith, perhaps? And many of them do want that. And so we have follow-up that way as well. And I hope that kind of answered your question. But that's a very challenging thing with the numbers that we're doing. So, yeah.
Do you have any plans to expand your nonprofit's offerings to the spouses or additional family members?
I really wish I'd have talked about that a little more. Thanks for asking that. You guys are asking good questions. So about 4 years ago, we started bringing the entire family on some of these trips. And that presents a whole nother problem. Lodging is the biggest one. Because you can take a bunch of guys and just lodge them in the same room, throw them on sleeping bags, they're all fine. When you bring the wife and their kids with them, that doesn't work very well. So, for example, the one in Batavia just 4 weeks ago, just down the road here, we had 3 individuals that brought their wives and their kids. Now, the other point is, you've got the guys are going out hunting. What do you do with the wives and the kids all day? So we found a couple neat things that we do. So we find a local spa or something like that will donate services for the wife. And then we've had some limo services come and pick them up and take them on down for a day at the spa. We've had some stores that say just bring them in and we'll donate so many $100 for them to just enjoy shopping at our store for a day. When we start to pull all that together, the impact on the family became so much greater. So we find that to be one of the best ways to do it, but it takes so much more coordination. So that one over in Batavia does that well. We've got one in Missouri does it well, in Florida, and actually another one in Pennsylvania that does it well, but it's hard to get that one down right now. We'd like to get all of them running that way, but not yet. We're not there yet. So, yeah.
Jeremiah, with that in mind, you mentioned that the guys go out hunting, but obviously we have female veterans as well.
Yeah.
And I think, in fact, one of the pictures you had was quadriplegic.
Yeah.
That female.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. How do you
She was actually the first female veteran to go on a hunt with us. And we've had several since, but I think it was kind of neat. I wondered, here's what I wondered about it. I wondered, what's the competition going to be like amongst Army and Marines? They're already fighting with one another at the, giving each other stuff. And then here comes, it was a nice way of putting it. Here comes a lady into the mix who wants to hunt like the guys, but doesn't really talk the same way as the guys. How's she going to fit in? I kind of wondered how that was going to work. But the neat thing was, the guys changed their approach. It wasn't her that needed to change. Everybody else, it was kind of awesome to watch. They were all rooting for her in the end. I mean, when she actually shot her deer, they were the ones that rejoiced the most and rushed out to that field, giving up the rest of their hunt that day to be there to experience the moment. That's what was so heartwarming to watch. So I think here's what I've found about it. The women that we've taken have actually impacted our trips more and caused much more camaraderie within the veterans. I would love to send one on every hunt. Our problem is we only get, out of the 550 we've got right now online or more, I think it's up to 560 now, I think we've only got about 20 that are waiting trips. We just don't have a lot that request it. I would like to see more, but we don't have a lot right now.
I have to ask the obvious question. How does a quadriplegic hold a rifle or pull a trigger?
It's a huge, amazing story. First ever quadriplegic to actually shoot a deer on her own without any assistance. She insisted she would not use that little blow tube that they use to do it. She has one muscle that works outside of her head up, and it's her arm to pull like this. She's got a muscle that she can just pull her arm. So we had to, basically, we put a little device on her finger that put it in a permanent position, and we rested her arm, held the gun into a device on her wheelchair, and she learned how to fire. But if you've ever shot a gun of any kind, whenever you do that, you will pull and move the gun because you're not holding it with your other hand. So she had to actually learn to play the shot. Shoot a little bit left, it pulls it into the kill. And I'm telling you, she did it all on her own, but it was very hard. Each day we would go out. It took her 5 days. Each day she'd go out. She always had one in front of her. And on the first day, it was like, she's got a little contraption that moves the wheelchair just a little bit up, down, left, right. And she would be looking through the scope with her hand ready, and she'd be looking, and she'd tell the other person running the wheelchair up a little, and then the deer would walk. It wouldn't just stay still for us, and then it would walk. She'd go, okay, right, nope, too far, back left, and then it'd move again. And I'm telling you, they would not cooperate. So on the fourth night, she gave up. She said, I am done. I'm not doing this anymore. She was upset. And I went and I told her, I said, do you mind? I'd like to pray with you over this. And I just said something I'll never forget. I was praying with her over it, and I said, Lord, we need you to reach down and hold the deer. I thought it was kind of funny, but I was like, Lord, I need you to reach down and hold that deer in place for as long as it takes for us to get her ready. And I swear I've never seen a deer stand still for as long as it did on that fifth day. It did. It walked out and it just stood still. And I was like, awesome. It didn't move. She was trying to get adjusted and it wouldn't move. And so she ended up pulling and she put a perfect shot on it. Went down in like 10 seconds. So, amazing story. That's why so many people were really blessed by it.
So you didn't have another man with a rifle hidden somewhere that took a second?
No, believe me. really thought about stuff like that. We were like, maybe we would just let her shoot, but somebody else, yeah. Any other questions? That's a good, fun question, though. And thanks for allowing me to tell the story. That's a really cool one. So, yeah.
Comments. Amazing story. I heard a lot about nonprofits and different kind of engagements. This is, I feel really amazing. It's just a comment, not a question.
Okay. Thank you.
You guys did a very specific approach to bringing back the veterans back to the social life.
Yeah.
Which, like I understood, that you enjoyed doing what they're doing.
That's actually, I'm glad you even said the comment, because a lot of them tell us that in that book. They'll say, I have been afraid to socialize with people ever since my time in combat, but this brought me back to believing I can again. Jeremy Rogers, the 3-time Purple Heart recipient, that's one of our board members. He was afraid to go into public for the longest time. We took him on a couple trips, changed his life too, and now I tell you what, you would be hard-pressed to find a more social butterfly. The guy really is very outgoing and hilarious. He will joke more about his injuries. It's just something. So he's quite a fun guy to be around. Yeah.
So how do you recruit the veterans? Is it mainly through doctors, through VA hospitals, or like?
It happened in a number of different ways. One was our website. There's an Apply Here section on there, and that's why it's user-friendly. We get the majority of them to go through there. However, we started to go into expos and things like that. I speak nationwide at a few different expos or churches. And at those locations, veterans will hear about what we're doing, and they'll be like, how do I apply for one of those awesome trips? We tell them, go online, hit the Apply Here, they do it. That happened. I also, being at the Warrior Transition Unit as a fellow patient, I would tell them about it there. And I ended up in 3 different Warrior Transition Units before it was all said and done. And I recruited a lot of them straight out of that from being just a patient right beside them. So, all right.
My field is like disability. I study disability, different kind of disabilities.
Right.
And I feel like the veterans are mostly like physical impairments, mobility limitations after the wars. And you guys mostly targeting that group of people. But do you think is there any way like you could expand by bringing more people who's kind of not so much only physical but some kind of mental challenge?
Yeah.
They could, as you said, they can go through this therapeutic process.
Right.
As a way of getting back to the community.
And I think how I can answer that. Our database that we have, see if I can find it one more time. Our database that we have tells us about each individual one, whether they're a Purple Heart recipient, in other words, they've been wounded by fire. It tells us whether or not they have an illness, a mental illness. PTSD is a mental, a lot of people say it's a mental illness. TBI, traumatic brain injury. PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. So yeah, we try to help, shouldn't say treat, we try to help every one of those, all classes. But here's what's unique about it. I can't, how do I put this? I have a person calls up, for example, I'll use one. A guy calls me up from Nebraska, very wealthy man, calls me up and says, I want to host a veteran. And I say, okay, we have a number of different styles. What do you want? Because people will be like, I want to host one that has received a Purple Heart. Or people say, I want to host one that really is struggling. And that may just be PTSD. Or I want to host one that was a Marine who served in Afghanistan. Well, we can find out through our database which ones fit that category. Or I want to host an Army guy who spent time over in Vietnam. We can host any of those. But the point of all of this is simply this. The guy that calls up to host, or gal that calls up to host the program, they will tell me what they want to host. I'm not going to tell them no, because they're giving us a free opportunity. So of course I'm going to say, well, certainly, we'll send you guys that are missing limbs if that's what you want. So we cater to the need of the person that's hosting. That kind of answers that question. But we are shooting to help every one of them. And there's all different types of ways in which we can do that. The guy in Nebraska called up, and he was the most unique one. He said, I want to host a guy that's blind. He's so wealthy that he could afford to buy the computerized system that ran off of the scope. And it's a long story, but he bought several tens of $1,000s worth of equipment to make that happen for a guy that was blind. So we got guys that want to do that. They want to host specific individuals to help impact their lives a certain way. Maybe, I hope that answers your question. We try to reach them all, but I have to cater to what the host wants in the end. So, all right, is that, any other questions?
Question or comment or thought? I was just curious in terms of, so when people are hosting in all of these different locations across the country, how do you make sure that they're sort of adhering to your goals for the hunts?
The same way we did with them being divisive about the Christian faith, we do the same with our hosts. So when they choose to host a hunt, we send them a form you need to sign. And in it, it's got an agreement form that says, do you agree to allow us to host or to hold devotions at your location? And this is actually one of the most divisive areas. You would think it would be the veterans, but that one's actually even more divisive. We have a guy that for probably 6 to 7 years just called me up this week. Says, I want to host some guys this year. I said, great. We'll send one of our staff members up and help you out with the devotion side of it. He goes, do we still have to do that? Well, he's never done it because he just doesn't agree to it. He's definitely against that side of it. So is it a benefit for us to keep turning down that many people and not supporting all of our veterans that want it? I think so, actually. I think it's a benefit because we'll stand by the one thing we've said that we are going to be in. That's a ministry, first and foremost. So if I was to change it for one, just think of how the floodgates change after that. So, yeah. All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it.